Hi, and welcome to the next lesson for Paddle NBA players. Today, we're going to talk about positioning on the court. This is a key aspect of playing paddle, and in many occasions will make you win more games, and more importantly, get less tired. If you're not positioned correctly, you're probably going to be running all over the court. You will occasionally encounter rivals which you're not able to overcome, and many times this is due to good positioning. In paddle, due to the fact that the court is so small and that there are only 2 players, makes positioning super important. We're going to analyze what is the best position for each and every situation. Paddle seems like a very complicated and technical sport, but really can essentially be summed up into 6 main actions. Serving, returning, playing at the baseline, playing at the net, transitions from the baseline to the net, and from the net to the baseline. This is why it's key to always be aware of what moment we're in, to know in what situation and side of the court we need to be at. What distance do we have to the wall? What distance do we have to the net? And most importantly, to avoid playing in certain areas, like for example, the middle of the court, which I'm sure you've been advised to avoid before by your other coaches. But on the other hand, you see professionals spending a lot of time in this area. Why? Because they're able to recognize what moment they're in and make a good prediction of what will happen based on the information they have been collecting during the match. We will study this in the future. Now we're going to focus on the basic positions and then we will move on to more advanced positioning. We will start with the serve. When choosing your position for the serve, you have to know if we're going to play in Australian mode or not. We will start playing without Australian mode. As you know, playing without Australian mode means that if the score is love to love, I will be serving from the right side of the court and staying on that same side. In that case, your position, using the T as a reference, you may progressively move towards the right, getting closer to the sidewall, up to a point where you find yourself comfortable. I don't recommend getting any closer than 1 meter to the sidewall. If you're positioned closer than 1 meter to the wall, you will be leaving the center of the court too exposed. You will also be exposing your intentions to aim the ball at the side glass. So remember, I recommend being positioned between 1.5 and 2 meters from the tee. Once placed in this position, this is when you will serve and move up to the net. We will see how to move up and in what direction in the lesson regarding the serve. The second option we have is playing with Australian mode. We will use the same example. The score is love to love, and obviously I have to serve from the right side. Because we're playing in Australian mode, for those of you who don't know what Australian mode is, don't worry, we will dedicate a full lesson to it. In this case, if I'm a backhand player or you are a backhand player, you have to serve from this side of the court, diagonally and at your opponent who is located on the right side. Move to your side of the court, which in this case will be the left side. In this case, I recommend you're positioned as close to the tee as possible. But remember, none of your feet can cross over to the left side of the court. In most of the courts, this point will be indicated with a small line in the center of the service line. You can't step on the line or move your foot past it. This is very important, and it's the main reason why players serve so close to the side they will later occupy during the game. After this, the player will serve, you will serve, and then move up towards the net. We will later see how to move up to the net. Now we will analyze the return. When we're waiting for our opponent's serve, it is essential to know where to be positioned. The generic position, or a position that you can use as a reference, in the case that you're playing in a glass court, will be right at the intersection of the joints of both the back and the side glass, between the first and the second side glass, and between the first and second back glass. If you're placed in this exact position that you're currently seeing on the screen, you'll be more or less properly positioned or in a generic or base position. I say this because there are always exceptions, but generally you'll be positioned correctly. You might have to make small adjustments. For example, using the same example as before, if you're a forehand player who is bothered by backhand serves, in this case you would probably want to take a few steps towards your backhand side or left side in order to cover this weakness. On the other hand, if your opponent is serving to the wall, you can move slightly towards the other direction. Even though these adjustments might seem insignificant at first, they are very, very important in playing paddle. Since the size of the court is so small, every slight adjustment in your position will help you create an advantage over your opponents. The next aspect we will be covering is positioning at the baseline or back of the court. As I mentioned before, the base position, or the position that I will recommend, is the intersection between the joints of both the back and the side glass. When you have the ball, meaning the ball is coming towards you from cross court or down the line. So you're waiting for the ball. Obviously, we can play when we're in possession of the ball, but we can also play when we're not. So if you're the partner that's not playing the ball, and your partner is waiting for a return, you can slightly move towards the middle. Only a little, as you can see on your screen. Why? Because when we're playing on the cross court, we try to force the opponent to move around inside of what would be their half of the court. This means all those balls aimed towards the middle are going to force him to move out of position. If when defending at the baseline, you leave the corner uncovered, you're putting yourself in a very, very complicated situation. The ball can open or close in a very, very small space, making it very hard for even the best paddle players to return these kind of balls. For this reason, if you are the partner of the player that is in possession of the ball, you should move a bit towards the center. This will allow you to take care of those annoying balls coming down the center of the court, so your partner can focus on positioning and returning balls aimed at the corner that he thinks will fall to the ground after bouncing off the glass. Let's move on to positioning at the net. Generally, it's the position where most of the people will feel more comfortable, close up and ready to attack, although it also has some complications. Your position on the net will depend on where the ball is in that exact moment. If the ball is coming towards you diagonally, you should be placed a bit further back. You should also be positioned slightly behind your partner. For now, don't worry too much, we will be analyzing this situation in a future lesson. But if the ball is coming from the cross court, you should be positioned approximately 2 to 3 meters from the net. In most situations, this will depend on many aspects. With your partner positioned slightly forward, covering the possible stroke down the line, you'll be behind him mainly managing aerial play and cross-court balls going through the middle of the court. The middle of the court will be yours to take care of. On the other hand, if you're defending balls down the line, meaning the ball is directly in front of you, you want to be positioned closer to the net. Keep in mind that you should be able to almost hit the side fence in a full arm stretch. Don't worry about being able to hit the fence, because it's very, very hard for your opponent to aim a ball that close to the fence and for it to pass you. If it does pass you, don't worry too much. In tense situations, like for example would be a tie break, it will be very hard for your opponent to aim the ball at that exact position. So it's important you're positioned approximately 2 meters from the net, depending on the ball's height and a lot of different factors we will study in future lessons. But you will be positioned slightly closer to the net than your partner, who will be defending balls coming from the cross court and should be returning the next ball. So, in this position, your main objective is to prevent balls from passing down the line and helping your partner with cross-court balls. Last position we will be going over are transitions. How do we move from point A to point B? This could be from the baseline to the net, baseline to net transitions, or from the net to the baseline, net to baseline transitions. Before going into positioning, we have to differentiate between the player that is in possession of the ball and the player that isn't. I emphasize on this so much because many times amateur players don't realize how much their position can affect the point. All the tactical and technical actions taken by the player who is not in possession of the ball will heavily influence the outcome of the match. So if you're not in possession of the ball, you can move from the back to the front at another time that is not the exact moment of impact. You can advance if your partner thinks it's the right moment to do so. So, in this case, you simply avoid the middle of the court and stay in the correct position at the net or the correct position at the baseline or the back of the court, always taking into account what direction the ball will be going towards. Now, if you're the player that has the ball, in this situation, you should wait to make a good hit, and then advance or not, depending on the ball you've just played. If you've played a good cross-court lob, you can then advance and move up to the net, occupying the corresponding position, and then wait for the next ball. On the other hand, if you've played the lob down the line, you should advance to your position as quickly as possible, stop, and wait for the next ball. If your movement is slow and you're not able to reach your position, you will have to stop as far as you were able to advance. I recommend that you stop the moment your rival's racket hits the ball, even if you've not reached the base position that I've just recommended 5 minutes ago. Why? Because if you keep advancing and your rival notices it, he can play you a counterfoot or a fastball towards your body, and then you're not going to be in a very favorable position to return the ball. So again, if for any reason you're not able to reach the base position, stop where you are and perform what we would call a neutral or positional ball. And then after hitting the ball, continue to the correct position. All we're left with are the net to baseline transitions. As I've said earlier, if you're the player that is in possession of the ball, you'll move backwards while keeping your sight on the ball, then turn around and return it. But on the other hand, if you're the player that doesn't have the ball, it is important that while you're moving backwards, you keep your eyes on your opponents and not on your partner. This is one of the most common errors amongst amateur players. So remember, always looking at your rivals, not at your partner, at your rivals. You will move in relation with the speed of your opponent's ball and the type of hit performed. So you'll be moving faster or slower, but it is key that you're constantly looking at your opponents so you can keep your partner updated with quality information. Your partner will be focused on returning the ball and will not be able to read the opponent's play, so it's you who is in charge of reading the rival's intention and informing your partner. So, in this case, you'll move towards your position, which will be the base position we've just seen, remembering to always look forward and always keeping your partner informed. It is also important to know what will be your next play. Always plan out your next play taking into account the information collected by you and your partner.